Hello, I am the Deer Runner, and in this now's video, I'll be analyzing My Hero Academia. I will show that this story is a verbal retelling of the events by future Deku to an important person, which was highly distorted when it was converted to the manga or anime format we see, hiding a large amount about what he says, but is still there, which I was still able to translate a lot of it and found the first few episodes was an introduction showing the history of the most important factors that brought the society what is currently when future Deku retold the story. This will contain spoilers for the My Hero Academia series. This is your final spoiler warning. First I will show one which is stating Deku has an original quirk in the first episode. Whenever there is a sudden drastic change to storytelling, something is always being stated, which in the first episode, just before Deku would head into the tunnel, he will face a sludge villain. Starting the incident, he would get the ultimate superpower, one for all. A sudden alteration to storytelling appeared, revealing Deku has an original superpower, before he received one for all, from All Might, which in their world the superpower is called a Quirk. First part established the topic by showing an event that can betray what he wants to state symbolically. This event is a conversation focused on the topic Deku becoming a greatest superhero like All Might, which is literally about to happen, as the upcoming event is when Deku is chosen to be the new inheritor of One for All, by All Might giving Deku his power.
Citizens, hope has arrived because I am here!
He's the coolest in the universe! And once I get my quirk, I'm gonna be a hero just like him!
The next part we can see his mom react strongly to what he said, becoming extremely sad. Looking back at what Deku specifically said, to see what could have triggered that, he stated he can't wait to have his original quirk manifest, as when people in the world is very young, like he was during that time, they usually have their quirk manifest if they get one. Then she got sad, which there are only two possible explanations. Since quirks are passed on by the parents, she is likely worried of a quirk Deku can inherit from one of his parents, or that she is worried he won't get a quirk despite wanting one so bad. But the next scene will immediately dismiss the possibility she is worried Deku won't get a quirk. As his next scene shows, a doctor explaining the symptoms Deku won't get a quirk, while Deku's mom is completely surprised, showing she had no idea about the possibility he won't get a quirk.
Sorry, kid, it's not gonna happen.
Oh dear. So you really think there's something wrong then? Most of the other kindergartners in his class have begun to show signs already.
My records say you're a fourth-generation quirk user. What powers do you and the boy's father have?
Nothing too special. I can float small objects towards me and my husband breathes fire. They're useful enough, I suppose.
Izuku should have already manifested one of these quirks or a combination of both, but after viewing his x-rays, I don't think he's going to. You see, when superpowers first began appearing, there were many research studies conducted, and doctors discovered a link between the bones in a person's foot and their likelihood of developing a quirk. People with powers have only one joint in their pinky toe. Their bodies have evolved into a more streamlined version of the human form. You can see here that Izuku has two joints in his pinky, like roughly 20% of the population these days. Based on the research that's available, it's safe to say your son isn't going to develop a quirk.
So she's worried about a quirk Deku could receive from one of his parents. After that, during the emotional conversation, which his mom seemed to comfort Deku, agreeing he won't get a quirk, future Deku started saying very suspicious statements. I needed you to tell me something different. Not wanted to, a necessity. His world was falling apart, which if we look at this historically, Deku ignored what she said and pursued being a hero, getting All Might's power, a dream come true. But he needed her to tell him something different.
Fear not, citizens! Hope has arrived because I am here!
See that, Mom? There's always a smile on his face, no matter how bad things get. Even when things seem impossible, he never gives up. Do you think I can be a hero too?
I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different.
Mom, that's not what I needed you to say. Couldn't you see? My world was crumbling. There was only one thing I wanted to hear.
Since the topic was stated to be about him getting one for all from All Might, and his mom is hiding information about a quirk Deku can get from one of his parents, and worried about him getting his original quirk from one of his parents, we need to ask, can an undetected quirk Being inside the one being given one for all create a disastrous situation like what future Deku implies here, with him needing her to tell him or his world would fall apart. When one for all is given to a person, it fuses with the power, then takes all those powers with it to the next inheritor, leaving the previous wielder with a fading shadow of what they had. Since the combination of the quirks is permanent, if a conflicting quirk is attached, it can ruin one for all, kill the new inheritor, and would make it far too dangerous to be used. Which, since one for all is used by society to be its unrivaled, overwhelming force, it relies on to keep society together. If it turns on society or becomes unusable, due to the high dependence and potential backlash from one for all, they have a much higher chance to collapse. With future Deku stating his world is falling apart and she can stop it by telling him about a quirk he could get, it matches, so a conflicting quirk is attached to Deku, which fused with one for all in the upcoming event. Now I did find Deku's original quirk, which is covered in my Deku's original Scanning Quirk series. It is a powerful information gathering quirk that is very dangerous. It mentally manipulates him and physically manipulate Deku's body movements to move him around as a pawn, to fulfill what it interprets is his desires. But since it resides as a multi-personality in his mind, having to use a section of his brain to exist, so a person controlling events while using potentially less than a half of a brain, its ideals and mental state is extremely disrupted. It doesn't care about harming others, it has a severe social phobia, making it hide itself to extremes, and is prone to going to extremes to complete its plans, which I will now add my research on this quirk to this, making the and future narration makes sense.
I made a decision that day. No matter what anyone else thinks, I have to believe in myself, and I'll keep smiling, just like him.
He states his desires turn to being a hero like All Might from that day forward, which would cause an activation, making a plan to pursue one for all that can be taken if All Might is deceived into choosing Deku to be the next wielder of his power, which the upcoming event, All Might will choose Deku due to his heroics, or what looks to be heroics. Which the event in the shows around the time Deku would head to the chance encounter with All Might, Deku had really desired to be a hero due to a classroom incident, while around the same time, All Might got too close to Deku pursuing the sludge villain in the same city, with a lot of time to set up a plan, which is covered in the first episode of Deku's original Scanning Quirk, which I showed it stealing the one for all quirk by brutally orchestrating the disaster to get All Might to choose him as his successor. The second episode repeats most of this again at another critical point. This is a common pattern when specifically the point of a reasonable no return, there is a future message that states vaguely what will happen. This point is when All Might started talking about Deku getting one for all. Future Deku started to talk again with suspicious statements, but he sounds like he's close to tears while showing his mom's statement saying he can't be a hero, despite she is aware of this quirk, emotionally stating clearly he needed her to just tell him.
For some reason, I remembered my mother's words in that moment.
I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different.
You never told me, Mom. Back then, the thing I wanted you to say, the words I needed to hear.
Which this event filled in All Might stating you too can become a hero.
Young man, you too can become a hero.
Which is the story is verbal retelling what future Deku says. What is said before should be able to fill in the intended meaning of All Might's statement, which All Might stated. Before you have to have a superpower to be a superhero because the villains are too powerful.
Pro heroes are always having to risk their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without powers. So can you be a hero? Not without a quirk.
So stating that was what he needed his mom to say, says again Deku's mom needed him to tell him of his hidden quirk, then future Deku states there was hope. But it doesn't say why at this point.
Dreams can become reality. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that this is the story of how I became the world's greatest hero.
Which stating him being the world's greatest hero must mean he was able to save and protect the world despite his conflicting original quirk. Devastating what keeps his world from collapsing, so must have solved that issue as well in some effective way. Looking at what this hope is, we can see future narrations, which is future Deku telling specific information word by word to whoever he is talking to, stating clearly what a new student would face in UA, which UA is where new inheritors of one for all are trained, so a new quirk this inheritor has could be attached to fixing the issue in a place you're supposed to train them with the best resources to figure anything out.
UA's Hero Course curriculum. There are normal core classes like English. They meet in the mornings. We eat lunch in the main cafeteria, where we can buy pretty tasty stuff on the cheap. And then, in the afternoon, it's finally time. Hero Basic Training, the clothing allowance. Before we enrolled at UA High, we submitted our Quirk registration forms, which included physical measurements and any desired costume designs, to an exclusive clothing company designated by the school. With all that info, they created state-of-the-art costumes for us.
No one else would have been told this info in that way, and that would be a realistic solution, especially with Deku having an information gathering quirk that can scan quirks. We also hear several times which statements are repeated, which include at the beginning of episodes, future Deku is learning to be a great hero in the walls of UA.
Welcome to UA High. In a world where about 80% of the population has some kind of superpower called a quirk, this prestigious school is built to train the heroes who protect our citizens. Many of the world's top champions have walked these halls. Now I'm a student here.
Which at this point, years went by since he left that school. All Might, when he taught at UA to look over Deku, had a lot to learn, which Deku taking that role to guide his chosen inheritor to defeat his quirk's problems would too. Which learning how to get past the barriers, being considered the greatest hero, as Deku can't be considered the greatest hero after accidentally destroying a symbol of peace role that is keeping this world together. So to have his accomplishments count, making him the world's greatest hero, he has to fix one for all, so why future Deku stated he's learning to be a hero in UA. This also gives a significant amount of future information. Since UA is stated to be running as Deku is sending his inheritor to it, UA will survive, at least up to the point future Deku retells the story. With the complex underlying system built on society foundation by using the same clothing allowance and low-cost, high-quality meal plans. So the society as well is intact, with stating it will likely be around for Deku's chosen inheritor. Now getting back to the event that was being focused on, we can hear the music following the hidden story with a severely hopeless and tense theme when All Might is telling Deku his crook can be passed to him.
Do you want to accept my awesome power or not?
What is he talking about? What is this?
Journalists always guess my quirk is super strength or some kind of invulnerability. When people ask in interviews, I always make a joke and dodge the question. That's because the world needs to believe that their symbol of peace is just a natural-born hero like any of them. But I'm not. There's nothing natural about my ability. I wasn't born with this power. It's a sacred torch that was passed on to me from someone else. I can give you my abilities.
But when the subject changed to One for All, almost exclusively, it is uplifting, showing future Deku knows how bad it was for him to receive One for All, and how he views One for All as such a wonderful and important thing.
The true name of my power is One for All. One person improves the power, then hands it off to another person. It continues to grow as it's passed along. It is this cultivated power that allows me to save those who are in need of a hero, the truth behind my strength.
The next part of the same statement mixes Deku being chosen and explaining the noble nature of One for All, which shows the ones who are chosen noble process, which the music is decided to not change its uplifting tone, so continue to focus on the noble nature of One for All despite Deku being chosen was being mentioned.
Why would you choose to give me a gift like that? What if I can't live up to it?
I was on a long hunt for a worthy successor, and then I watched you jump into action as the rest of us stood idly by. You may just be a quirkless fanboy, but you tried to save that kid. You acted like a hero.
As all this info is hidden in the first two episodes, then this clearly is future Deku introducing all the major factors to this. As the start of a story would likely state a lot about what led to the world being like this, going step by step, which stating a major one meant he likely stated the others, or at least most of the others. So looking at other future statements, the first one at the beginning talks about Deku stating he knows there is a power difference with the weaker people need a powerful force to protect them, with young Deku defending a person shown as well, which is just an event to show his point.
The sad truth. All men are not created equal. When I was 4 years old, I learned that some kids have more power than others.
Then states future Deku is trying to help others and trying to figure out how to do it, striving to be the protector.
But that won't hold me back. If anything, it pushes me to do better.
So it's stating the exact problem with his original quirk he hasn't figured out to get past the brutal beatdown of the people by his quirk plans, while he's trying to figure out how to instead defend them. Now, Deku's original Scanning Quirk series is only on episode 6, and For many seasons, Deku will remain in a controlled environment in UA, with only extremely obviously evil opponents coming in, hiding any problems he may have with facing opponents that are moral, so should be shown mercy, until he faced Gentle Criminal and Brava near the end of Season 4, so because his research is indicating there was a problem with handling those types of situations, and my currently released research has not detected this problem yet, since I don't like just accepting a future prediction without getting confirmation, because it's easy to misinterpret these things, I'm going to skip ahead and analyze the battle with Gentle Criminal and La Brava to see if this predicted problem can be spotted in an area it most likely would appear in. To start with, at no point it is hidden from Deku these opponents are mostly good people, not like the seriously evil opponents he faced before, and Deku understands this throughout the match. Clearly. Now to start with what happened during this incident, at the beginning, Deku's original quirk does what he usually does in every incident. First, the activation of his quirk is caused by an interpretation of his desires. This desire was since Deku knew the school festival would get cancelled if any attack happened at the school, he wanted to prevent any attack. But since his quirk always chooses to hide itself, it orchestrated an excuse to send Deku out to the enemy location without him realizing he was manipulated. This time by hiding damaged equipment that was critical for the school festival performance, which when the enemy was detected, it allowed Deku to notice the damaged equipment, then know he need to go off campus to find what he needs. It's sent him to a shop that is extremely close to the only detected threat, which he literally was sent next door to them. Then time Deku's movement to have him run into them. When Gentle Criminal and La Brava would head out of the building they were in, which was far too much of a coincidence. And of course, scanning quirk would be like the only explanation for this. We can see with Gentle Criminal fighting capabilities was more than enough for Deku's original quirk, weakness on fighting one-on-one skill versus skill battles so can't end the match quickly. Plus, it wouldn't let Deku do the invincible attacks to hide itself, making this a long dragged out fight. Then when the match was underway, abnormalities began appearing. We can see an unusual large amount of flashbacks, showing how much the festival meant to Deku and his friends, motivating Deku to fight. Now, normally, such thoughts can be expected to go through someone's mind in such a situation, but throughout all previous events in My Hero Academia, it never showed Deku having such a large amount of flashbacks. Which is clear, Deku understands these opponents are not the true evil he's been facing, so could be discouraged to utterly beat them, unlike what his quirk always tries to do. So this could be potentially be his quirk forcing Deku to crush them when he doesn't want to, which is a problem we are looking for. But I of course will analyze the rest. At a certain point with Gentle Criminal down, La Brava begged Deku to let him go in an emotional way that Deku clearly shouldn't at all want to fight them anymore, going against his quirk's normal plan of utterly crushing enemies. Then within a minute, a bizarrely creepy emotion comes over Deku, which no opponent ever received that kind of stare from him, and he attacked with the clear intent to crush them. We also see soon after, with him emotionally freaking out in a not as creepy way, the flashbacks became much more intense, showing some painful but unrelated topics, showing the death of a close friend and other emotional topics related to trying to cheer up the very abused child Eri. Then he fought crushing them and had them arrested, not processing at all his previous I don't want to fight stance. So basically first Deku was resisting crushing them, which his quirk put some defenses up, just enough to keep him fighting, using the things readily available to hide its presence, while still winning. Then Deku strongly resisted the plan. Then we see clear signs his quirk went full force, making Deku fight to crush them, corrupting his mind with mental manipulation, forcing Deku to fight in a freaked out state to crush his opponents, removing the barrier of Deku not wanting to fight, while still trying to hide its presence. That is clearly what was predicted, and this is a clear case it happened, so that prediction is confirmed. And you can listen to the music it's not really focused on being on the side of Deku. It's really extremely supportive of gentle criminal and the Brava, while many times strongly showing dark tones when focusing on Deku, which is the music following the hidden story. But it's a whole episode, so I'm not extending this video to show the music evidence. Now, getting back to the first episode, the very next part he gives a history of Hero Society, starting at the very beginning. Then says and shows suspicious things that clearly states, in a hidden way, the history to the point in time future Deku tells the story. First, a superhuman was identified, then people with superpowers started appearing everywhere.
The first incident was in Ching City. An extraordinary child was born who radiated light. After that, reports of people with superpowers popped up across the globe. No one knew what was causing these quirks. Before long, the supernatural became the totally normal. Dreams a reality. The world became a superhuman society, with about 80% of the population possessing some uncanny ability.
There was chaos, which people took the hero roles to defend society with overwhelming public support. The governments got behind them, officially establishing the government-controlled superhero roles.
Our streets looked like scenes from comic books. As cities swirled with chaos and confusion, a new profession dominated our collective consciousness. It was an age of heroes. With the rise of superpowers came an explosive increase in criminal activity. While governments were stuck trying to figure out how to reform laws with quirks in mind, courageous people started performing heroic acts to keep our cities safe, protecting us against villains who abused their powers for evil. With overwhelming public support, heroes found an official place as peacekeepers overseen by the government.
But during that statement, it states, was an age of heroes, indicating it is no more.
It was an age of heroes.
Looking at the rest, we see Mount Lady posing sexually for the cameras, acting like a hero while in reality, secretly playing the crowd for fame, stealing credit for the other hero as much as possible.
Piece of cake for the world's next hottest hero. Hi there, everyone. I'm Mount Lady. And you don't have to worry about this bum anymore.
Wait, she's getting all the credit?
Deku's plans became a competition to stay in the spotlight, primarily after the honorable origins of the original heroes fighting for the people.
Those who performed the best were paid the most and got all the fame and glory. Their careers depended on their ability to stay in the spotlight.
That is an extremely familiar topic for the ones who've seen the series' later parts, which most of the conflict can be tied back to this problem. And instead of that hero whose accomplishments was stolen being glad the villain was beaten, with no one dead, he seemed completely devastated, losing that bit of fame, symbolizing how it doesn't even occur to these heroes to be a hero instead of acting like one, which both of them clearly demonstrated they were great actors, showing how good at deceiving these fake heroes have got. Which later on the people in large part are sick of the hero system and society not caring about them, as greed, short-term profits, and not truly caring for them spread to the hero system. Despite what the insane power the population has, so the line separating the angry masses and the government is razor thin, able to have a small group devastate them easily, so society needed extremely high levels of unification and failed, creating the massive amount of conflicts we see in the series, which things seem to just be getting worse. Despite I consider what has been stated is reliable, it only gave us one side of the story. It only talked about failures and problems of the heroes, but nothing about their opponents. Which, obviously, the opponent's side of the story is extremely important on predicting what will happen. Society still being around, but messing up, causing a revolution, plus anything, can completely change the foundation of this conflict. Hidden dangers from the Quirks, potentially ending society, a hidden enemy with extremely different motives. Asteroids, zombies, basically anything could be their opponent, and whatever it is, could have the population latch onto society, reject society, or even society rejects the population for some reason, like maybe they're infected with something. There was no way with this information by itself to determine the ending. Fortunately, there are future narrations located in the third season that will address what the final main opponent is, which was caught up in my UA Trader research. though my currently released research is severely outdated, so not reliable, on top of the not used in a way that truly addresses this question. Though I believe I caught the UA trader, I believe I got a lot wrong on what her motive is, therefore reaching significantly wrong conclusions on why is everything happening, which will be updated in another video. Hopefully this time gets closer to the true answer. Now moving on to another set of important future narration statements. We can clearly hear future Deku says he disowns his original Quirk by stating he doesn't have one, which he clearly is aware of the Quirk when he said those statements.
And so, I held out my weak, quirkless hands and grabbed the future. I was born without superpowers, quirkless, just an ordinary kid.
And during the first incident he got chosen by All Might, future Deku stated he doesn't know why he did what he did, despite he clearly stated what his Quirk was doing, which is covered with my first video on Deku's original Quirk.
I don't know why I did what I did. Maybe it was the look on his face.
So, it must have done truly horrible things despite future Deku sees a solution to deny its existence, so a clear disowning of it. Looking at how this Quirk will make Deku, instead of handling things correctly, follows a plan that doesn't care about the harm to the world it causes, while making him look like a hero, that is extremely bad if things get complicated. Like, I don't know, a revolution? Martyrs, no winning the hearts and minds of people, brutal outcomes for good people, which crazy omnipotent force orchestrating events, plus ultimate attack power can really make some bad outcomes, especially with how prevalent and unstoppable everything points to this Quirk being, with it being combined with One for All. Now the next problem will be studying future narrations that indicate strongly the death of characters very close to Deku. The issue with these is that neither one of the two indicated to have died people have died in the manga yet, so the foundation of these two predictions is notably unstable. But I found enough proof to make a good case, but until they die, neither can be confirmed. So here they are. Which again happened at a critical point. Deku is about to receive One for All from All Might. Since I did skip over what happened there due to no math was given, to determine what this Quirk has done with clearing the beach from training, which future Deku is shown in my other research, is very careful, stating whatever his Quirk has done to alert his inheritor as much as he can to beat those problems. We can see All Might did give him a printed out complete list of training he will do for this 10-month training, and All Might clearly stated it was training specifically designed for him, stating what will happen from start to finish. But we will block from seeing it. Therefore, future Deku, when he talked about this part of the story, is stating he did receive the info, but lost all access to it in the future. The information from this no reason to be willingly hidden event had to be unattainable. We can see Deku basically went through a boot camp, so he was likely disoriented, so likely unable to remember things.
Hey, holy crap, kid. You even cleaned up outside the area I told you to. Seriously, there's not one speck of trash left on this beach. Only a few minutes to spare, but you exceeded my expectations. It's you, crying 10 months ago. Look how far you've come. Such improvement.
But then All Might not being there to fill in the info means he has to be unavailable. But that means since he wants to keep the symbol of peace roll going, he'd have to be dead to not help, or he would have told Deku. We listed in the same event, future narration saying he stones his Quirk alongside giving proof All Might is dead. As he gets One for All, there is an indication of Deku being responsible.
And so, I held out my weak, quirkless hands and grabbed the future.
But that is not enough for me to be sure of the past conclusion. All Might had died. We can also hear a future narration with Uraraka when describing his classmates from UA. There was a lot of statements, but she is stated to be irreplaceable.
Well, I guess none of us came to UA to make friends. Still, I found some great ones. The students here range from weird to downright irreplaceable.
I like Deku. It could make a great hero name. Plus, I think it sounds kinda cute.
Then, after that, silence, as if the memory is too painful, despite clearly it basically states they will highly likely will get married, with how Uraraka must have admitted all those emotional love feelings she had for Deku, as it was stated in future Deku's retelling the story. So significant indication of a death. But also the story shows important factors that led up to things, which shows a lot she looks at strategy with the idea, what would Deku do? Constantly supports him in battle, a person in perfect position to be struck down as an expendable loyal pawn by a power that would love to move her around and then emotionlessly dispose of her, which he should buy him in a love relationship throughout the greatest battle he will face, a truly irreplaceable person. But since no bodies are available yet, we can't be 100% sure. But it is a strong possibility, especially All Might, both will die, with a high chance Deku's original Quirk is responsible for both, especially for Uraraka. There was another future narration randomly thrown into the series that states future Deku wished he could tell his past self to accept being Quirkless, and not desire to be a hero as much as he did, which caused the activation of his original Quirk to steal one for all.
I wish I could go back in time and tell 4-year-old me that everything was gonna be okay. That if you work hard and don't give up, wonderful, life-altering things can happen to you, even if you are just a quirkless nobody.
Which was likely inserted as it was such an emotional and important topic. He likely will state it several times during this retelling of the story. Looking back at Deku's mom to see if we can see why didn't she tell Deku of this Quirk, which she would have noticed the coincidences. While knowing what to look for to see the information gathering Quirk, we can see that despite future Deku identified a conspiracy with his mom and seems to be giving all the information on the hero's side mistakes and current state, which has been covering her as well, we do not see many details on Deku's mom's involvement, which can be explained by this scene stating Deku's mom hid all information she knows from future Deku, then states she should have just told him.
For some reason, I remembered my mother's words in that moment.
I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different.
You never told me, Mom. Back then, the thing I wanted you to say, the words I needed to hear.
Since it has been shown before he only shows what he is sure of, then this lack of details is due to his mom successfully hid a lot of info which a future narration states she did. But since Deku knows of the conspiracy, he also figured out some of the details, which should be hidden somewhere in the episodes has been containing the high amount of future information on the heroes. We notice that Deku's father not only is not there, but there is no trace of him. Despite the whole world, including the top heroes, are interested in knowing who did Deku get his superpower from, which they assumed it had to be from his father, due to his mom doesn't have that power, just a small little levitation thing, and powers are similar to All Might's, which he is a guy, so it could be Deku's dad. They live in an overpowered superhero's world. There is nothing short of an information gathering Quirk erasing all traces of the connection to Deku's father that can hide it. Which, that is what is there. Looking at the time range this happened, we know he was there when he impregnated Deku's mom, and disappeared some point before Deku was only a few years old. So we will look to see if something was happening during that time to cause an event that can answer this. During a pregnancy, hormones will often make a woman have violent, unstable desires to the ones around them, but since that is enough to activate the Quirk, Deku's mom, if she is the one that has that Quirk, would be extremely dangerous. With a Quirk in that state is prone to mercilessly kill the people near her to fulfill desires, which her husband was likely there as after he disappeared, she still showed she loved him, stating he was her husband.
My records say you're a 4th-generation Quirk user. What powers do you and the boy's father have?
Nothing too special. I can float small objects towards me and my husband breathes fire.
So prone to being the focus of violent desires from his pregnant wife. By remaining by her side, we can see since Deku's mom wasn't rich and most middle class without realizing that she's just desiring to be rich she can get it, that means she likely didn't know and this Quirk has a severe phobia. Plus is very good at hiding itself, which makes it very effective at hiding itself from the ones wielding it throughout their whole life. Therefore, that clearly wouldn't make sense she killed him, then after would desire to not get caught for murder. Then would again easily activated, which it scrubbed all traces of her connections to her husband, which, since we see no trace of her friends and family connections, at least in the anime up to this point it got to, and society pursuing Deku's father, would have talked to people she knew, which clearly there'll be witnesses, while this Quirk doesn't care about mass killing people. Some point after that horror or some other convoluted plan changing her identity instead of killing, She knew her quirk is real, as she got away with it, and was in a brutal mentally altered state to force her to scrub all connections to her husband, but after could see the large amount of evidence revealing her hidden quirk like Deku before noticing the coincidences. As stated in my first video on this topic, but in her case she had no choice but to understand what she saw. If she ever told anyone or her son shows a power, they noticed a void of missing information, which included likely more than one person missing, and know she is capable and had a triggering event with her pregnancy. When that void of information was created, she faced a high chance of being caught and prosecuted. A motive to hide Deku's original quirk. When young Deku asked if he can become a superhero, she did say that I wish things were different. She didn't say no. She really did wish things were different. That seems to be all the information stored here, so I'll end my video here. With my other videos focusing on Deku's original quirk in chronological order, it is clear things were bad. But now, it is stated things will get extremely bad. But Deku has a plan. Unfortunately, that plan being stated as it is going to happen soon or just started, as future Deku retells the story, there was no proof it'll work. This has been a Deer Runner, the Runner of Deer. Thanks for watching.